Warning disclaimer: this story is a fictional work created purely for emotional storytelling and dramatic expression. It is meant for a mature audience and explores complex family dynamics, unspoken emotions, and psychological tension. All characters and events are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Reader discretion is advised. The summer breeze carried a strange calmness that Friday evening. I had just finished prepping dinner when the doorbell rang. It had been nearly 5 years since I'd last seen Aiden, my late sister's only child. And now, at 22, he was no longer the awkward, lanky teenager I remembered. He stood tall, his jawline sharper, his eyes more intense, yet his smile still had the same innocent warmth I used to adore. "Aunt Claire," he said with a half-smile, pulling me into a tight hug. His voice was deeper now, but it carried that same softness that reminded me of my sister. It was impossible not to get emotional. I had raised him like my own until his father demanded full custody after my sister's funeral. That separation still left a dull ache in my chest, and seeing him now, it almost felt like time folded in on itself. We spent the evening catching up over spaghetti and red wine. He told me about college life, his difficult relationship with his father, and his dreams of becoming a therapist. There was maturity in his voice, a gentle sadness that lingered behind his words. I could tell he wasn't just tired from studies, he was emotionally exhausted. He needed peace. He needed home. "I never stopped thinking about this place," he admitted as we cleared the table. "It's where I felt safest." That single sentence hit harder than he probably intended. I smiled faintly and reached for his plate, our fingers brushing. There was a flicker of something strange, something quiet and unsettling, but I pushed it away. Later, as we sat on the couch sipping chamomile tea, he leaned back and sighed. "Do you remember when you used to give me back massages after soccer games?" he asked casually. I chuckled. "Yeah, you'd pretend your shoulders hurt just to stay up past bedtime." "Well, they really do hurt this time," he said, more serious now. "Do you still have that lavender oil?" I paused. There was nothing wrong with what he was asking on the surface. But it felt different now. He wasn't a kid anymore, and I wasn't just a guardian aunt. We were two adults in a quiet house filled with old memories and new silences. Still, I nodded and fetched the oil from the bathroom. When I returned, he had already taken off his shirt and laid down on the couch, face down, waiting. I hesitated only for a second before kneeling beside him and pouring the oil into my hands. The scent of lavender filled the room. As my fingers touched his back, a wave of emotions washed over me: grief, nostalgia, and something far more confusing. I didn't know then that this moment, this simple massage, would be the beginning of something that would shatter the truth I thought I knew. The first few strokes were innocent. My hands moved gently over his shoulders, gliding along the curve of his back just as they had years ago. Aiden didn't say much at first, just soft groans of relief, the kind anyone makes when tension finally begins to melt. But as the silence deepened, so did something else. Something unspoken. The air in the room shifted. His breathing changed, not the shallow sighs of someone relaxing, but slow, deliberate breaths. Deep inhales, slower exhales. Almost as if he was holding something back. I tried to ignore it, telling myself he was just tired, maybe too stressed. But the way his muscles tensed beneath my touch told a different story. His body was responding, but not in the way I expected. Then he whispered it, softly, barely audible. "I've missed your hands, more than I should have." I froze. For a second, my fingers stopped moving entirely. My heart thudded loudly in my chest, like it wanted to escape the room. I looked down at him, my lips parted but no words came out. Did I mishear him? Was he just talking in a half-sleep state? "Aiden," I said cautiously. He turned his head to the side, just enough for me to see part of his face. His eyes were closed, but there was a faint, almost guilty smile on his lips. "I used to fake those backaches just to feel your touch," he continued, still in that low, broken whisper. "It made me feel like I belonged to someone again." A knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't a child seeking comfort. This was a young man, wounded by loss and emotional neglect, craving something dangerously close to forbidden. And worse, I couldn't deny that a small, twisted part of me was listening. Curious. Confused. Trembling. I gently lifted my hands away from his back. I think that's enough for tonight, I said quietly, trying to sound calm, steady. But my voice shook. Aiden sat up slowly. His bare chest glistened with oil, his expression unreadable. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. The silence screamed louder than anything he had said. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he murmured, reaching for his shirt. I never felt close to anyone the way I did with you. And it messes with my head. My throat tightened. How do you respond to something like that? How do you tell someone you raised that his feelings are wrong without crushing the only soft spot he has left? You're tired, I finally whispered. Get some sleep. He nodded and walked toward the guest room, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood in the hallway, hands still trembling from the weight of what he had said. Everything had changed. And I didn't know if I could ever go back to how things were before. The house was silent, but my mind was anything but. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan above, listening to the quiet hum of its blades cutting through the stillness. No matter how many times I replayed it in my head, his words echoed louder each time. I've missed your hands, more than I should have. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. The vulnerability behind it. The aching truth he had been carrying for who knows how long. I tried to convince myself he was just lost, emotionally strained, reaching out in the only way he knew how. But something inside me twisted, and I hated that part of me. Because even though I was disturbed, I wasn't entirely shocked. There had always been a special closeness between us, something tender, something sacred. After my sister passed, we had leaned on each other in ways no one else could understand. But had I blurred a line somewhere? Did I unintentionally give him the wrong kind of comfort all those years ago? I wrapped the blanket tighter around me, but the chill wouldn't leave my body. Just after 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. Aiden's voice followed, barely above a whisper. Aunt Claire? Are you awake? I didn't answer right away. My instincts told me to stay silent, to pretend I was asleep and let the night swallow the awkwardness. But I couldn't. Not after what he said. Not knowing he was out there, probably filled with regret or confusion. Yes, I finally replied. Come in. He entered slowly, wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been tossing in bed too. He didn't look like a man who wanted something inappropriate. He looked like a boy lost in a sea of emotions, drowning in guilt. I'm sorry for earlier, he said, sitting down on the edge of the bed but not looking at me. I shouldn't have said that. Things get tangled in my head sometimes. I sat up against the headboard, keeping the blanket wrapped around me like armor. It's okay to feel things, Aiden. You've been through more than most people your age. He finally looked at me. But what if what I feel isn't okay? The question pierced me. I wanted to give him clarity, but I didn't even have it for myself. How do you explain that comfort, when misplaced or misunderstood, can start to feel like affection? Or that emotional dependence can disguise itself as something more? It just means you need space to figure it out, I said gently. And I need space too. We're both still healing in different ways. He nodded slowly, his eyes glassy. I just didn't want you to hate me. I could never hate you, I whispered. But we need to be careful with what we say, and what we feel. He gave me a weak smile and stood up. Good night, Aunt Claire. Good night, Aiden. As the door closed behind him, I knew nothing would be the same after tonight. The next morning was a quiet one. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels fragile, like glass underfoot. I stayed in the kitchen longer than usual, pretending to be occupied with making breakfast just so I wouldn't have to face him too quickly. I wasn't angry at Aiden. If anything, I was afraid of him, of myself, of what last night had awakened. He walked into the kitchen just as I was pouring the coffee. His hair was still damp from the shower, and he looked more rested than I felt. But his eyes, those deep, conflicted eyes, betrayed the calm expression he wore. Morning, he said cautiously, as though gauging my mood. Morning, I replied, my voice softer than I expected. He sat at the kitchen table, his fingers tapping nervously against the surface. I placed his plate in front of him, scrambled eggs and toast, and joined him with my own. We ate mostly in silence, the clinking of forks against plates doing most of the talking. Every now and then, our eyes met, and every time they did, we looked away just as quickly. "Thanks for breakfast," he said quietly after finishing. "It's nice being here again." "I'm glad you came," I replied honestly. And I was. Despite the confusion, despite the awkwardness, having him here brought back pieces of my sister, memories I didn't even know I missed. We decided to go for a walk later in the day. The park near my house was blooming with life, children playing, couples laughing, dogs barking with excitement. But between Aiden and me, there was a silence we still hadn't shaken off. He finally spoke as we sat on a bench beneath the oak tree. "I'm trying not to feel what I feel," he confessed. "But when someone makes you feel safe for the first time in years, it messes with you." I turned to him slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I understand, Aiden." "I do. But safety and love, they can feel similar when you're broken. They can even overlap sometimes. But it doesn't mean they're the same." He looked down, his hands clasped together tightly. "I'm not trying to be wrong. I just don't know how else to feel. When you touched me last night, it wasn't lust. It was like warmth I've craved for years." My chest ached at his honesty. It would have been easier if you were just being inappropriate. But this wasn't that. This was raw. This was unresolved trauma searching for a home. "I care about you, Aiden," I said gently. "More than you probably know. But some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. I don't want to lose you completely." He nodded. "Then tell me what to do. Because I don't want to lose you either." I looked out at the horizon. The sky was dimming, shadows growing long across the grass. "I think we both need to face the pain we've been hiding from," I said. "Separately, before we can be whole again, together." The evening settled in quietly, and with it came a strange kind of calm, as if the storm between us had passed, but left the ground soaked and unstable. Aiden stayed mostly in his room, reading or napping, while I kept myself busy with cleaning, laundry, anything that would keep my mind from drifting back to what he had said at the park. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. He wasn't wrong. Emotional pain has a way of blurring the lines between love and longing. And maybe I had played a part in it unknowingly. I'd always been the one to comfort him, to show him affection he never got from his father. But I never imagined that comfort could be misinterpreted as something deeper or darker. That night, just before bed, he knocked on my door again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened it, ready to set boundaries again if needed. But Aiden looked different, calmer, but also more serious. Like he had rehearsed something he couldn't hold in any longer. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, avoiding my eyes. I nodded and stepped aside. He walked in but didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. "I know I've made things complicated," he began, "and I know I crossed a line. But there's something I never told you. Something I should have said a long time ago." I felt my heart beat faster. "Go on." He took a deep breath. "When Mom died, I wanted to stay with you. I begged Dad not to take me away, but he didn't listen. He said it wasn't right for a boy to live with a woman who wasn't his real mother." I swallowed hard. I hadn't known that. I'd assumed his father took him because it was the natural next step, not out of spite. And when I left, Aiden continued, I felt like I'd been ripped away from the only person who actually cared about me. I was angry, hurt, and alone. "Every time I got into trouble, every time I broke down, I thought of you." His voice cracked slightly. "I held on to that feeling. I held on to you. I didn't realize I was crying until the first tear landed on my hand." His pain, his longing, it wasn't rooted in desire. It was rooted in abandonment. I had become more than just an aunt. I had become his emotional anchor, whether I wanted to or not. "I'm sorry for what I said that night," he whispered. "It wasn't about wanting something physical. It was about wanting to feel wanted." I crossed the room and hugged him tight, firm, like I had when he was a boy, and scraped his knee on the sidewalk. "You'll always be wanted here, Aiden," I whispered into his hair. "But we have to learn how to hold each other without hurting each other." He nodded against my shoulder. In that moment, something shifted again, this time, toward healing. The next day, the air in the house felt different, lighter, almost breathable again. It was as if something invisible had been lifted between us, replaced by understanding and a quiet grace. There were no more loaded silences, no more second glances or unsaid words pressing against the walls. Aiden and I moved around each other gently, not out of avoidance, but out of respect for the boundary we had redrawn together. He helped me in the garden that afternoon, digging up weeds and trimming hedges, our conversation shifting back to safer grounds. College, life after graduation, even what kind of dog he'd want one day. He laughed more freely now, and I saw glimpses of the boy I had helped raise, the one who used to chase butterflies and ask endless questions about clouds. Still, underneath the lightness, I knew what was coming. So did he. By early evening, Aiden stood in the hallway with his small duffel bag over his shoulder. His weekend visit was supposed to end tomorrow, but he decided to leave a day early. "I think I should give us both some space," he said, his voice soft but steady. "To think. To grow." I nodded. I couldn't argue with that. We had come too close to something fragile, something that could break us both if we weren't careful. And now that we'd stepped back from the edge, I knew the only way to protect the bond we still had was to give it air. "Promise me something?" I asked. He turned, one hand on the doorknob. "Anything. Promise me you'll keep talking. Don't bury things again. Not with me. Not with anyone." His eyes met mine. "I promise." We hugged again, this time without confusion, without hesitation. Just two people holding on to what mattered before life reshaped it. As he walked down the steps and to his car, I stood at the doorway watching, my arms folded across my chest. I wasn't sure if I felt sad or relieved. Maybe both. Because the truth is, healing often feels like a kind of grief. Letting go of a version of someone you thought you understood, and learning to meet them all over again. I stayed in the doorway long after his car disappeared down the street. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time in days, I felt grounded. That night, the massage table still sat in the corner of the living room, unused since that moment. I thought about putting it away, but I didn't. Not yet. It wasn't a symbol of shame. It was a reminder of a moment that nearly broke us, but didn't. It was a chapter we both needed to face to truly begin our next one. And even though Aiden was gone for now, I knew deep down he'd be back. Not as a wounded boy chasing closeness, but someday maybe as a man finally at peace. 3 months passed. The seasons shifted. The air grew cooler, the leaves turned from green to gold, and with them, something in me changed too. I hadn't heard much from Aiden in that time, not because we were avoiding each other, but because we were giving space to breathe, to reflect. Our last conversation still lived in the back of my mind, but it no longer haunted me. It had softened with time, like a scar fading into skin. Then one Saturday afternoon, as I was dusting the shelves in the living room, I heard the knock on the door. The same gentle rhythm I'd heard once before. I opened it, and there he was, Aiden, standing tall, a small smile tugging at his lips. He looked calmer this time, more certain of himself. He wasn't just visiting this time. He was returning with purpose. "I was driving through town," he said. "Thought I'd say hi." "Of course," I replied, stepping aside. We made tea and sat out on the porch where the breeze carried the scent of pine and fading summer. Our conversation flowed easily. There was no tension, no lingering questions hanging in the air. It was like he'd done the work, and so had I. "I started therapy," he told me, his hands wrapped around the warm mug. "I'm talking to someone about everything. My mom, my dad, even what happened here." I nodded slowly, pride swelling in my chest. "That's brave, Aiden. I'm proud of you." He smiled. "It's strange. The more I talked about it, the more I realized it wasn't about you. Not in the way I thought. It was about me. I was trying to find the version of love I lost when Mom died, and you were the closest thing I had to it." His words landed softly this time. They didn't sting like they once did. They didn't carry confusion. They carried closure. "I'll always love you," he said. "But now I understand what kind of love that is. You were my safe place. And I confused safety with intimacy. That wasn't your fault." A silence followed, warm, not heavy. "I'm glad you came back," I said finally. "Not because I needed to hear this, but because it's good to see the man you're becoming." He chuckled. Still got a long way to go. Don't we all? I replied, clinking my mug gently against his. We watched the sun dip below the trees, painting the sky in shades of amber and lavender. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't carrying the weight of what had almost happened. We had unraveled the confusion, thread by thread, until all that remained was truth and forgiveness. He didn't stay the night this time. He left before sunset, but with a promise. I'll visit again soon, he said. And this time, I believed it wasn't an escape. It was a homecoming on his terms. The next few weeks passed quietly. No unexpected knocks, no uneasy memories. Just peace. A kind I hadn't felt in years. The storm between Aiden and me had blown through, and all that remained was a new foundation, gentler, clearer, honest. Then one late afternoon, as I was finishing a book by the fireplace, I heard the soft buzz of my phone. Aiden had sent a text. Coming by tomorrow. Got something I want to tell you face to face. My heart fluttered, not with fear, but curiosity. There was something different in his tone. Something calm. Assured. The next day, he arrived just before sunset. He brought flowers this time. Lavender, like the oil I'd once used. It was a quiet nod, a memory neither of us needed to speak aloud. He didn't stay long. We sat by the window, sharing tea like old friends. But before he left, he stood up, looked me in the eyes, and said something I hadn't expected. You saved me. I blinked, unsure how to respond. But he continued. Back when everything was falling apart, after Mom, after Dad turned cold, you were the only one who held me without needing anything in return. I didn't understand that kind of love at the time. I twisted it. I let my loneliness shape it into something it wasn't. And for that, I'm sorry. I stood, reaching for his hand. Aiden, you don't owe me an apology. You were hurting. And hurt makes us see things through a cracked lens. What matters is that you faced it. You owned it. He nodded, eyes slightly glassy. I'm learning to love people for who they are, not just how they make me feel. And I want you to know something. He leaned in, not too close, and whispered, you were never just an aunt to me. You were the mother I didn't get to keep. Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from something deeper. That sentence, that whisper, held the truth we had both been searching for all along. I had been trying so hard to understand why the line between us had blurred. But now I knew it wasn't desire or confusion or even misplaced affection. It was grief. Grief dressed as hunger. A need for connection that had gotten tangled in silence. Aiden didn't stay for dinner that night. He had plans, a life waiting for him beyond this house. But when he left, I didn't feel the ache of distance. I felt the warmth of something finally healed. As I stood in the doorway once more, watching his car disappear down the familiar road, I whispered to myself, you were worth waiting for. And this time, the whisper didn't shatter me. It set me free. 77.